pie with whipping cream. Oh, it's like a chocolate cloud in your mouth.
I'm so excited. I'm going to get my very first cooking class here at La Cuisine Paris. We are going to learn how to make souffles. Souffles are notoriously hard to master. They end up flopping. I am determined to make the perfect souffle. So let's see if I can learn any tips right here in Paris. Welcome back, YouTube fam. This is my last video of a 3-part series on Paris, France. But this time, you are going to get a free master class at La Cuisine Paris. This is a cooking school in the center of Paris offering hands-on cooking classes and food tours in English. The chefs are warm and friendly and the classes are small and hands-on, so you could learn the many tips and secrets of French chefs. Then you can recreate their cuisine in your very own home kitchen. Of course, you get to eat what you make, which might very well be the most memorable meal you will have in Paris. On the agenda today are souffles, both savory with French cheese and sweet with rich chocolate. By the end of this video, you will be armed with the knowledge to make the most perfect souffles comparable to any French bistro. So let's get started. For a recipe that serves 4 people, you want to start with the eggs, and we're going to start with 4 eggs. You want to separate the whites from the yolks, and it is very, very important to not get even 1 bit of yolk in with the whites because you want to eventually whip the whites into stiff peaks, and the yolks will prevent you from doing that. So just be careful and set aside the 4 egg whites. For that rich melt in your mouth feel when you bite into that souffle, we used Gruyere cheese because this is pretty much a staple in French cooking. And you want to grate about 80 grams of Gruyere. Don't buy pre-grated cheese because they always add extra starch. Just buy a block and grate it yourself. Now it's time to make a flour butter roux, which is quite simple. You just add 30 grams of butter to a saucepan, and you want to melt that and gradually add 30 grams of flour. You want to stir vigorously to avoid any clumps, and she showed us a really nifty technique.
Okay, because often when it's burned, it starts burning on the corner. It's not a corner, but you know, the edge. The edge, like this. Okay, my butter is melted. And then, if you have lumps, you're gonna make Z or 8. Z is easier. Okay? Always put the flour. Yes, you can put the flour now. And you can put everything in one. Oh, you can.
When making a roux, clumps are the enemy, so it's important to keep stirring as vigorously as possible. And next, in a separate saucepan, we heated up 250 grams of milk, which we add gradually to the roux, which you continue to stir. Now it's time to season the roux with about a half a teaspoon of ground nutmeg and just enough salt to taste because remember, the Gruyere cheese is plenty salty as well. Speaking of the cheese, time to add that 80 grams of grated Gruyere cheese and stir it up until it's all melted. What results is pretty much a fondue looking like concoction. Don't you just want to stick your face in that ooey gooey cheese? Now what's great is those egg yolks aren't going to go to waste either. So you want to add the egg yolks at this point a little bit at a time while stirring vigorously. By the time you're done making the souffle, your arms are literally gonna get yoked from working so hard. At the end, all of that hard work is worth it when you get this gorgeous golden yellow consistency that looks sort of like a hollandaise sauce. To complement the flavor of the cheese, she finely chopped a bunch of chives. Now chives are great because they add a nice subtle flavor and beautiful color. Now, not to forget those egg whites that we separated in the beginning, she whipped them until you saw stiff peaks the way you would prep a meringue. And don't be intimidated, you could use a hand mixer, you don't need to use a standing mixer to achieve this. Before folding in the majority of the egg whites, I like her terminology. She said you have to sacrifice a little bit of the egg whites to loosen up the batter. Once the batter's loose, it's easier to fold in the rest of the egg whites. And once she folds in the rest of the egg whites, take note on how gentle she is.
and just go put it on the back and roll with your bowl.
Take note that it's good to prepare souffles in a cooler kitchen because there was a heat wave in Paris that week, and man, we were sweating up a storm.
We're all sweating together. Souffles are a sweaty activity. I didn't know that.
To ensure successful souffles, it is important to fill each ramekin only 75% each and to have soft melted butter to coat the ramekins with.
Okay, what is really important, what are you gonna do? You're gonna take, you're gonna go and you're gonna put butter everywhere, okay? At the beginning, you can go, you don't care, okay? Just needed butter everywhere, all small corners, everything,
Even
okay?
the top.
Go with it, thin layer, not too much. And then, really important, you're gonna go from the bottom to the top. Okay, we absolutely need those marks going up. So basically, it's gonna help giving the direction to your souffle. Okay, just put a bit of flour, run it like this, and then take your mold, go to the top, because we're gonna clean the mold, but at the very end. Okay, and then when it's done, everywhere.
Yeah, so you can go ahead and bang them.
But really flat. Don't go on the side.
These are the tips and tricks that I absolutely treasure when learning from master chefs. It's basically techniques like this that can make or break your souffles after all of that hard work. Plus, I'm always down to make loud banging noises in the kitchen. It's a great outlet and stress reliever.
And there is a really important thing to do after that. Before cooking it, you have not tapping it. You clean the side. So you're gonna basically go like this. Okay. So there is no souffle batter on the side.
And the final touch is to sprinkle more shredded cheese on top because there is no such thing as too much cheese. She then placed the ramekins in the refrigerator for 30 minutes before baking. Then bake for 20 to 25 minutes at 390 degrees
You
Fahrenheit.
never open the door. Never.
While the cheese souffles were baking, we started prepping for the chocolate souffles. And to prep those ramekins, you do the same thing with the butter, except instead of flour, you use sugar to coat the ramekins. Then she taught us how to make a sesame nougatine, basically a sesame candy. The sesame candy would be used to garnish the chocolate soufflés. To make the nougatine, she basically put a cup of sugar in a skillet over medium heat and kept shaking it until the sugar turned into a dark caramel, almost amber in color. At this stage, she added a half a cup of sesame seeds and stirred it until it was well incorporated, and then quickly, right away, went to put the mixture on silicone mats. Then she put a second silicone mat on top, and this was great because the sesame caramel was very warm. She could roll it out. It was super pliable before she could cut it into strips.
When it's still hot, slice tiny pieces and just... You have to do it quickly if you want to do bracelet. You can twist it, shape it a bit, but you have to do it really quickly because, as you can see, when it's already hardened.
Nutty sweet caramel, it's like sesame brittle. And that's what she's going to put on top of the chocolate souffles. This woman is a genius.
Now the measurements for the chocolate souffle are slightly different. You want twice as many egg whites as egg yolks. So for this recipe, you use 6 egg whites that you separate from the yolks. Then you need 300 grams of dark chocolate, preferably 60 to 70% chocolate. Instead of a roux, this time we made a chocolate ganache, where we heated up 300 grams of whole milk. Before adding all of the milk to the saucepan, she did set aside about a half a cup of milk so that she could dissolve 20 grams of cornstarch. This will thicken the ganache and prevent clumping. Now my favorite part is adding those chocolate chips to the milk and whisking it vigorously. After that, add the cornstarch milk mixture.
Okay. Just let it rest for a minute. It will soften the chocolate under, and then mix it, and then add the egg yolk.
Once the chocolate cooled off a bit, we added 3 egg yolks. So that's half as many egg yolks as egg whites for this recipe. And speaking of the egg whites, we also use the same technique that we used for the cheese souffle. Just beat those egg whites until stiff peaks form using a stand mixer or a hand mixer. And look how fluffy that is. Again, you sacrifice just a little bit of the egg white to loosen up the batter, and then you continue to gently fold in the rest of the egg whites. After you fill those ramekins, bake at the same temperature of 390 degrees Fahrenheit, but for a shorter period of time, only 10 to 15 minutes. Now, after all of that hard work, I can't tell you how impatient we were to try all of those souffles we were working on all day.
First impressions?
Yes, please.
It's like crunchy on top, soft in the middle.
The powdery oil immediately when it touches the hot oil. Well, you put, you know.
Okay, so I'm gonna put
To go with the souffles, we also had a classic French salad of frisée with a mustard vinaigrette and toasted pine nuts. And I couldn't wait to get my hands on more of that crunchy and caramelly flavored sesame brittle. But honestly, there's nothing like learning and cooking alongside the local chefs to gain a deeper appreciation of the indigenous cuisine.
really quick, so go with it, okay?
Jack it up, that's very good.
Oh, then it's the biggest one.
With whipping cream.
Ooh, put some of that whipped cream on top of it.
Oh, it's like a chocolate cloud in your mouth. Like a puffy chocolate cloud. It's so good. Okay, I'm gonna eat a dozen.
If you want to see it,
If I do a sesame chocolate whipping cream sandwich, just put it all together. Yeah, like that.
When I said I could eat a dozen, I think the chef took me seriously, so she invited us to go back and finish off the super-sized souffles she made with the rest of the batter. We gave it our best shot, no lie.
Wow, look at that. This is the colossal souffle of the evening. The end of all endings, right here.
The king of the king.
The king of desserts.
Hope you enjoyed my 3-part series on Paris, and if you haven't seen the other 2 episodes, what are you waiting for? You can check them out on the end screen right here.